Hello, and welcome to the Student Experience podcast, where we'll be chatting to members of the University of Suffolk community, giving them the opportunity to share their experience with us. I'm Sam, and I'm a member of the Student Experience team. And in today's episode, we're joined by Tim Clemens and Thomas Heathwaite, who are from the Sustainability team. We discussed their roles, what the university does to encourage sustainability, and why sustainability is so important. So, Tim and Thomas, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Would you like to firstly introduce yourself and your roles at the university?
Yeah, my name's Tim. I'm the Sustainability Manager at the university. I'm new, been here 4 months now.
And I'm Thomas Heathwaite. I'm the Sustainability and Built Environment Coordinator here at the University of Suffolk, mainly responsible for looking after utilities and biodiversity, including a lovely wellbeing allotment.
Yes. Could you tell us a bit more about sustainability at the university and the projects that you lead on?
You want to go first, or shall I? You go first.
Okay, so sustainability at UOS is all-encompassing. We tend to do it to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, all of our policies and action plans, etc. All come down from those sustainability development goals and align to those. We run a number of projects.
We've got the wellbeing allotment, which Thomas can expand on later. We've just introduced car sharing, just to encourage people to share cars rather than each come in their own car. What else do we have going on? Go to my crib sheet. We've got various accreditations. So we've got a LEAF accreditation, which is dealing with laboratory waste. So it's quite a specialist accreditation. It's a bronze, silver, gold award. Bronze is just your basic accreditation, so you show that you have a process and a system to deal with lab waste. Silver is then in a bit more detail, and then gold is how you reduce and expand on that lab waste. And that's kind of the goal for everything we do at the university. It's number one, we've got to record everything we do in terms of the utilities, the electric we use, the gas we use, the waste we produce, what type of waste we produce, how much of that type of waste we reduce, and then what happens to it afterwards. The university's electric has been, for want of a better description, green electric since 2022. So it's called REGO backed is the technical term, which is Renewable Energy Guaranteed Origin, which means it's either hydro produced, solar produced, or wind produced electricity. There's no carbon with the electricity that the university uses, and we're working to get rid of gas. So
yeah, indeed.
You go, Thomas. You say something.
Other projects we've done, so Switch Off campaign I led on from February the 1st to March the 15th of 2024, and during that campaign we managed to make an energy saving of 18% compared to the baseline that I took between November and December of 23, which was the equivalent of powering 7 family homes in England for a year. So that was quite a good saving. Also during that campaign, we employed 10 building champions who would spend 1 hour every week turning off devices that were on, such as lights, such as photocopiers, such as computers, such as monitors.
I bet there was a lot.
There was, and 6 of those were students, and over those 6 weeks, we managed to turn off collectively 3,057 appliances, of which 51% were lights, 25% were computers, and 16% were monitors. By building, 87% of all lights were turned off in arts, 639 times, atrium 598 times, and waterfront 126 times. So that was quite a good campaign. We also ran, I think, 7 different events as part of that campaign. Our biggest one was the pop-up cinema which we ran with the Mets in conjunction with them, and had about 30 people attend, staff and students. Other projects we've got going on include the wellbeing allotment that Tim has just alluded to, which is a brand new space where students and staff can come to that place to just mingle, socialise, or plant, or crop, or weed, or sow, or water, or do anything to improve their mental and physical health. And we also have a number of other biodiversity areas on campus, including the Bumblebee Buffet area, 2 wildflower meadows, a physics garden, and a wildlife garden and pond, which we'll get to no doubt later.
So there's an awful lot of stuff going on, and Thomas, being the biodiversity guy, he looks after all of those he just listed off. That's part of his role in the university. We didn't mention the micro placement students, did we? So that's something else we ran for the last year, or this year we've ran some micro placements for students. We've got them to do various tasks all around sustainability, around the wellbeing allotment mainly, or the students I was working with was around the wellbeing allotment, and then a survey around the university to get to see how aware students and staff were of the actual green spaces around the campus. What we can do to improve the green spaces around the campus. It's very difficult here because we're kind of central in the town, and there's not a lot of green spaces around here, but how we can best use what we've got. So they did some great work on that. That's now finished. And we're now building up to Freshers Week.
Indeed.
To have a stand there.
We'll be making squash curry out of a squash from the wellbeing allotment. That's
Nice.
10.3 kilos.
Wow.
That's
So,
big squash.
Wow.
Very big squash.
very big
I
squash.
did see some big vegetables out there. There was
There was a lot.
yeah, there's a lot. But yeah, no, it seems like you guys have been up to a lot.
There's an awful lot going on all the time. I mean, it's non-stop. I mean, we're now talking about, we're talking with the marketing team about having a sort of not a campaign as such, but more of a regular quarterly newsletter going out just to try and raise people. The idea of it all is to get people to change behaviours. Do you need to drive? Can you use some other means of transport? Do you need your laptop left on? Don't forget to turn your screen off, which just goes back to Thomas's switch off campaign. All those little things. I mean, if everybody just makes a very small change in what they do, then we've got 2,000 people on this campus, including students. So if everybody made a very small change, all of a sudden that becomes a very big change, which is what we're aiming to achieve. So,
Yeah, amazing. I mean, you guys have received some recognition for the great work that you do. So, we've heard that you won some awards for sustainability. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
There you go. I'll leave that to Thomas because he's been here long enough he partook in the awards. I can only claim that I was just here at the end.
Yes, so we have won some for sustainability. So in 2023, we won Suffolk's Greenest County Award for Suffolk's Greenest Business. So that was very, very good. And then we've also were shortlisted for the EADT Business Award for Most Sustainable Business. So we have won a few awards or been shortlisted for a few awards, and no doubt we will continue to.
Yeah, but
Yeah. So yeah, we've done well.
That's brilliant.
we can hear how much is going on and all the things you've been doing and the awards that you've won. So why is sustainability so important to you? What is it about that which
For me, it's just we need to become more sustainable, not just as a university, but as a planet. You see the news every day. Floods here. Eastern Europeans at the moment are flooded. It's all triggered by what we're doing to the environment as a general rule. It changes the airflow. It changes the airflows. It changes the sea currents. It warms the seas. And you will have all seen the pictures of the various people with their plastics pontoons, and it's just insane that we've gone to a point where, and it might be an extreme view, but I'm going to say it anyway. Nobody seems to really care, and that's the problem. I think it's not. We're not asking. We're not stopping the joy and the fun and all the rest of it in people's lives. We don't want that. We just want people to think more about what they're doing. Do you need the bag? The supermarkets does all that fruit need to be wrapped up in shrink wrap plastic and all the rest of it, and polystyrene boxes or even cardboard boxes? I mean, I know these things can all be, or a lot of these things can be recycled these days, but the actual point is, do we need them anyway? A lot of those sorts of things use oil to produce the wrapping and all that kind of stuff. So it's all about just using less of what we do. I mean, you can't see, but I'm old and grey. When I was young, here we go, old man talk. When I was younger, it was a thing where you would just return your glass bottle, get your 5p back for your bottle. You didn't have plastic bags. The thing with plastic bags is everybody was complaining, oh, you paper bags, you're cutting down so many trees, so we produce plastic bags. Good move. They don't biodegrade, they don't do anything. They just spend the rest of their life in a tree or in a bush or buried in the ground somewhere, and that affects the animals. So it's a full circle. Everything just needs to adjust back to where it was, or not fully back to where it was, because that will never happen, but just something a lot better than it is now. And people just, it's companies and corporations can't do it. It's got to be people like you and I and all the rest of it that push that change through. So yeah, sorry, you ever checked Thomas L. Sharp now, off into ramble mode.
And Tim says, I think without sustainability, it is as simple as we will not survive. There is no two ways about it. Sustainability intrinsically touches everything. So as the UN Brundtland report, Our Common Future in 1987 defined sustainability as it was the meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So, for example, when you get up first thing in the morning, and I quite like this example of sustainability. So you may first get out of your bed, but what has your bed been made out of? Are those materials sustainable? Yes or no? I'm not here to say that. But then you may have your phone plugged in at the side of your bed, charging overnight. How long has that been charging for? Has it been using up excess electricity? Yeah. Yes or no? Then you may put on the radio again. What has that used? Then you may go to the bathroom and you may wash your face, have a shower, and what are those products that you use packaged in? Probably the majority of them, I would guess, are probably plastics or similar. And so what's going to happen to those bottles when you've done with them? Okay, some places you can refill them, but in most instances you can't. Or how about toothbrush heads? Or how about how you commute to the way to work? Yeah. And so you slowly start to see, and I kind of wish we had Jenga here, because if you pulled it out every single time I went through one of those things, you'd slowly see how the world crumbles, and that's just what, an hour of your day, if that. So sustainability for me touches absolutely everything, and sustainability takes forever, and that's the point. We've got to get better, we've got to go fast, but we also have to go at a way that doesn't disadvantage people. So yes, I'll stop rambling.
No, but it's,
Finally, yeah, it's a case. I mean, again, you just have to look at places in Asia. where, I mean, I used to work a long time ago in shipping, and that was back in the day when you were allowed to ship waste to other countries, and it would literally be 100 odd 40-foot container loads of just waste being shipped to Asia for them to deal with. So they kind of became our dumping ground. So we were just kind of moving our problem, and it's reducing everything that we do. You know, going back to you know, if you can get your waste not to go to landfill, then you've had a small success. So it can either be recycled, reused, or just not produced at all. I mean, it's simple. I mean, I buy apples and fruit, as Thomas knows, to have my lunch during the day, and I just pick it up in a paper bag, and then the paper bag gets recycled.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no wrapping, there's none of that. So it's just everybody reducing what they do by a little bit, and it will make a big difference. And it's just trying to spread the word, which is, you know, the big challenges is people's travel. I get that. I understand. People have restrictions. People have, you know, no respect to the bus service, but you can't go from A to B, and people have been spoilt for far too long. So it's up to science and technology to produce something, EVs, hydrogen cars, whatever that might be. So people can still go A to B, you know, that's fine. But when they're going A to B, they just don't produce the carbon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing is we then see that biodiversity, so that all reduces because of all of these other negative consequences, and we are shutting off biodiversity, or by building more, or we're having all of these other impacts, and we need the biodiversity to survive. We need the bumblebees to go around pollinating flowers. We need the other pollinators like your butterflies or hoverflies to do the same. Otherwise, we are not going to have things to eat. It's as simple as that. Bumblebees pollinate about 70% of our crops. So if we lose them, and unfortunately we are already losing them, there's at least 2 to 3 of the bumblebee species we used to have here gone, then we are going to be in a very difficult position. We can't hand pollinate every single crop, and it would not also taste as nice, and it wouldn't have so much variety of stuff that we could eat. So that's why things like, to put it back to here, we have the bumblebee buffer area, so that we're trying to reduce that decline, or the wildflower meadow, or we have swift boxers, and the idea of those is that they can then feed on the things that are feeding on the wildflower meadow, and so it's trying to put that ecosystem back to how it should be, and trying to mitigate the loss.
To quote the Lion King, it's the circle of life, which it literally is. You know,
Yeah.
It's that simple. You know, we have the bugs get eaten by the birds get eaten by the cat. Cat dies, and you know, unfortunately, and that goes into the cycle and produces the right nutrients for the soil that the plants and the rest of it can grow again. And it's just that there is a circle. And at the moment, the circle is a bit bent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we sort of touched on it a bit earlier, but I guess for a lot of people, they want to be more sustainable, and they want to help the environment, but they don't necessarily want to sacrifice what they have at the moment. So, you know, what are sort of challenges that we have to encourage people being more sustainable?
I don't think they're challenges as such. I just think people just need to just stop and think, you know. Do you need it for a start? You know, I mean, and this is something that there's a want versus a need. You know, I want to drink that comes in a can or whatever else. That's fine. You want to drink, no problem with that. Instead of looking at a can that's been produced that's going to get, I mean, ultimately it will get recycled, which isn't a bad thing. But it's not just the recycling of that item. It's what has it taken to produce that can, and so on and so forth. So there's all sorts of more sustainable packaging out there these days, you know, cardboard or whatever types of drinks. You know, you can just think about what you're buying. and think about how it was produced and what it took to produce it. Everybody has a mobile phone. Great, they are what they are. Do you really need to have the latest model every year? Again, my phone's 900 years old, I think. It still does what I need it to do. I can still do everything I need to do on that phone. So if everybody stopped buying new phones, I mean, it wouldn't be particularly good for the Apples of this world and the Samsungs, but then you're going to be taking less of the Earth's natural resources to produce all the chips and the wiring and all the other stuff that goes into making a phone. So just think really is for me the most important thing. Is just, and it's about spreading that message. Just, and we don't want, like I said earlier, you don't want to stop people having fun and having things and all the rest of it. But just think, do you really need that new phone? Do you really even need that new car? You know, do you need to take a flight for your holiday? You know, can you do it domestically? Can you catch a train? You know, all those sorts of questions. You know, just try and change your behaviour a bit. It's just habit. That's all it is. You know, people have. I think the world has become such a almost programmed by consumerism to want the next best thing, to feel that they need to have the next best thing, and that's a great job done by the marketing, the advertising companies. I think people now need to take a step back. You know, as you're kind of seeing with what the effect of mobile phones are having on kids. I mean, that's not particularly sustainable, but they're looking at the mental health impact side of things on kids. In some schools, there's a big academy group around here, Ormiston Academy Trust, I think it is, where they're stopping pupils having their mobile phones on at school because of the mental health implications. Because, you see people, I see people every day walk across the road in front of me like this. Which is, precisely.
Neck problems, literally.
Well, you do. You know, all those things. You know, it's to do with health. It's your mental health. I mean, that's not sustainable, but it's all in the same kind of area of thinking. You just got to stop and think about what you're doing and be more aware. I mean, we've got the wellbeing allotment here, as Thomas has said, and that's a great place. And we've got, you know, the green spaces we do have at the university are nice places, and people have got to stop and find the joy in that rather than find the joy with their face like this. And be more aware of your surroundings, be more aware of what's going on. It's those sorts of things for me. It's just people have got to change somehow and stop being driven by consumerism.
Sure. And as Tim says, behavioural change is probably the thing that is, for lack of a better term, the biggest challenge that we're going to have because of the reasons that Tim has just outlined there. We can do all the infrastructural changes here, like we've just put in a new building management system to help us turn off some of the lights that I was going back to earlier, or some of the heating or aircon units, etc. But we can do that, but then there's still got to be the behavioural change of people taking that and not just turning them back on and then leaving them back on because they want to. And then it also goes back to like student accommodation. So that's another key example. And although we don't touch that, that's another key area that we can educate and teach people why and that we need to change. Because without behavioural change, sustainability is hard. We need the people to be on board for the change to happen.
Yeah,
Baby steps, basically. Just little changes. You know, when you go home at night, if you have a screen, turn your screen off, because you'd be amazed how many people leave screens on. Tiny changes, and it's not a huge impact on electricity consumption, but it's just reducing the resource that we use. So we can, as more and more people do that, you can then move away from having actually any need for brown energy, for want of a better description. You don't need coal-fired power stations anymore, literally, because the generation that you produce through your solar, through your wind, through all those sorts of supply, hydro, all of a sudden you then have enough of that power to power houses and power everything that you need. Whereas, at the moment we're kind of, I think last year it was almost, I want to say 4 weeks where we actually didn't use any coal-fired power. So, and if people can just tweak things a little bit, that's obviously not just here, but that's our message for here. So that's why we've got the BMS system, so we can change all the background machinery mainly. We can't turn lights off, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to. But that's developing equipment like movement sensitive light switches. So if you sit in a classroom, do you really need all the old fluorescent tubes on? These are going to go at some point in time because they're not made anymore, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're sitting still in a room, the lights go out. It's not the end of the world. If you really do need them on, just wave your arm and they'll come back on again. But buildings, not so much in here, but certainly buildings with a lot of glass exterior, like we have a lot around the campus. Do you really need your light on in the classroom? I would say not. I mean, in my previous job, I dealt with thousands of schools. And we're always getting asked, how can we reduce our electricity, reduce our bills and all the rest of it? Because that's the other impact. You reduce your bills as well, which is good. And I would go around schools and I'd walk around all the classrooms and big glass walls of windows, middle of the day, all the lights are on. I can see, can you not see? Oh, but the teachers need them. Do they really? And that's the behaviours again. I mean, it sounds a bit preachy, but it's simple stuff like that. Do you need light on? I think half the time you don't, just because people automatically come in, they turn the light on.
Yeah, it's natural, isn't it?
It is.
Do it instinctively.
It's that habit and behavioural change, and that's the driver for everything. It's just small things from everybody equals one big thing, basically, which is good for us all. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously worked on so many things in your time working at the university, but do you have any upcoming sustainability campaigns and initiatives that you're looking at, with the commencement of the new academic year?
We have Wellbeing Allotment grand opening, which is actually on Thursday the 26th between 12 and 2, which is the official launch of that area. It has been running for about 8 months now of people putting stuff in, growing, but it's an official launch, and that's part of our Freshers Week celebrations with Student Union, who we've worked with really closely. So we're trying to get students more involved in that area. I had a session there yesterday, and I had 2 students come in, and they were taking their lunch break from doing their dissertation, and they were saying how nice this area is and how good it is that not only that they can crop produce and use that for a lovely salad, but also how good it is just to be outside and be able to have that space away from the traffic noise, away from other people, just to sit and talk and not at your phone. And so that is one of our upcoming things, and the Wellbeing Allotment will continue, like all other biodiversity areas, to be an ongoing campaign of getting people to use it, know that it's there, etc. And I believe Tim is also leading on car sharing.
Well, yeah, we've got not a campaign as such, but we're doing I suppose a soft launch of the car sharing spaces. We've got 5 spaces dedicated to people who want a car share, can car share. So yeah, just encouraging people to literally, as it says, car share. We've got that many people and that many cars coming to this car park. We don't profess to know where everybody lives and all the rest of it, but it's just trying again to get people to have that dialogue. We're actually talking about setting up a team space, but we're not quite sure how that's going to work. I looked at it almost like a chat room, but I don't know if that's going to work, where people come on and say, well, I live in this area, I'm happy to car share. And somebody else says, I live in this area, I'm happy to car share. And then somebody comes and says, oh, I live in that area, I'll car share with you. We get it's difficult for people because, you know, you've got teachers, students, all sorts of people, all doing different classes at different times of day. So it's difficult to get people, but it's just to start the conversation about can we do it. We've had 4 nurses who come from Bury. There was a bus from Bury to Ipswich. Apparently, I didn't know about that, but there is. That's now been stopped, and they noticed the car sharing spaces, so could they car share? Because they're all on the same course. There's 4 of them, so yeah.
They're at the same time. So
yeah, I mean, there's again, you know, it's not just about being sustainability. It's if you get 4 people in a car, you're going to have a conversation. Much better for people socially, mentally, to sit, talk, ride together. I mean, okay, you're cutting carbon because you're only driving 1 car. You're saving money because you're only driving 1 car. You're only paying for parking on 1 car. But also just for your mental health and that side of things, you know, to sit and have a conversation with people. I mean, okay, they work and they do the same course, so they all have something in common. But I mean, I do it. It's just who I am. But for example, down at Paddy and Scott's Waterfront, I was down there last week having a coffee, and I wanted to sit on the comfy sofa, and there was a lady sitting opposite on the comfy sofa, and I just said, could I sit there, make sure there's nobody coming? And then I spent my entire hour, instead of reading my book, talking to this old lady and learning a bit about her. And it's just that kind of conversation, that's better for you at the end of the day than sitting scrolling through Facebook or TikTok or X or whatever it's bloody called, all those things, you know, because it's just better for you. That's, you know, the whole idea of it's not just about being sustainable. It's actually about it's the whole topic of sustainability is actually it's better for you as well as a person. You know, I mean, you guys probably sit and talk to your friends and that sort of thing, and that's what it's all about. So if you can car share with 3 complete strangers, you've got a journey to get to know 3 complete strangers.
And they'll be friends pretty quick.
Well, exactly.
Car sharing them every
you've
day.
all of a sudden possibly got friends for life. I mean, it might not necessarily work that way, but hopefully it will.
Yeah.
So you've got all the benefits, and then you've got the social and community benefit on top of that as well, which again is a plus. So yeah.
And sustainability, when you go back to that, it also covers things like health, and it covers how do we become more healthy as a society, because our health is important, and you could take the definition of sustainability to mean that we ourselves have to be sustainable and give ourselves the right things to be healthy, to be happy, to enjoy life, to be productive to a certain degree. Although I don't believe you have to be productive every second of your day, but health is important, and that also comes back into both the physical and mental health into the definition of sustainability. So yes, sustainability and campaigns. Yeah.
I think it's definitely something that people don't necessarily consider, you know, looking at the health benefits as well and the social benefits, as you said. But yeah, so I was, you know, speaking of Instagram and scrolling through your phone for ages, I was on Instagram the other day looking through the wildlife ecology courses Instagram page.
Yeah.
And I saw a familiar face on there. So yeah, I guess this leads into our next question of, you know, your journey to applying for the role at the university and, you know, how you ended up in the sustainability team.
Yeah. So I started on the wildlife ecology and conservation science course in 2019, and we went until 22. That whilst COVID obviously happened during that time, it was still a very, very good course. I highly recommend that. And no, I'm not just saying that. And then I kind of sidestepped, and one of the lovely career advisors here, Annabelle C, one day said to me, behold, are running some summer internships there for 12 weeks. Do you want to apply? They seem like the type of thing you might do. At the time, I had not really thought about that. I don't particularly like history, partly because of the way schools taught it. I never did GCSE history, and I did that. I really enjoyed that. That's a whole different way of looking at history. Was there for not just 12 weeks, but 6 months, it turned out to be, which was lovely. And then this job came up and I applied for it. I didn't really at the time expect that I might be successful. But yes, as I say, the rest is history, and it builds upon everything I learned through the degree, and it's given me so many more skills since then. But I could not have got here without, firstly, the degree and that base knowledge, but also the additional skills you get from working in a completely different environment. And also whilst I was doing my degree, and even before, when I had finished A-levels, I always tried to volunteer as much as I could. And again, that gives you a lot of transferable skills. And again, would I be able to do the practical stuff that we do looking at our biodiversity areas or leading on those if I hadn't done that? Probably no, because you don't necessarily pick up those skills for a degree. So I would say volunteering is very important, and I would also say just make use of every single opportunity you get here. The motor placement scheme is fantastic. I did a motor placement with Justine in 3rd year of my degree, and I did a phase 1 habitat survey of a wildlife garden, which was the first one that we had done at that point, because the wildlife garden was only a year old by that point. And again, it's those skills and that, and who you know, who is going to help you get to a position and where I have got to today. So yes.
Mine is far simpler. I had a change of career direction probably about 15 years ago now. I went into work for a power company. And while I was working in the power company, sort of the looking at more sustainable ways of generating power and all that sort of thing was just starting to creep in. And I kind of transitioned into that and started to get more interested in understanding a bit more about it and why it was happening, all the rest of it. And from a power company perspective, which was fine. Then I looked one step further. The company I was working with, they generated 40% of the UK's power. Drax, the local company here, you may have heard of them. And they have pellet burning up in the northeast of England that generates the power. And I thought, great, that's very sustainable, that's lovely. And then I suddenly thought about, well, actually, it's not that sustainable, because they chop down trees in Canada. They have acres and acres of forests in Canada that are managed forests. So they chop a bunch of trees down, produce the pellets, ship the pellets to the UK into Teesport, I think it is. The train from Teesport into the power plant dedicated that then burns the pellets to produce the power. So, and the forests are managed in such a way that they can, and you think, well, actually, whilst the very small part of it here is sustainable, the actual journey, again, the journey to get it here is not that sustainable. And then I moved into a facilities company, again, working in power, renewable power, helping schools and things save on power, reduce their power. Because it's you know, especially for schools and us as a university, it's not just about being more sustainable. It's ultimately, it saves you money. So if you can reduce the wastage in your power and your gas and all the rest of it, you're not only being more sustainable, but as a school or whatever, it saves cost, which for schools and unions is key, unfortunately, these days. So that through that, where I was in there for 10 years, I got to know the university, know Justine, specifically because they were one of the accounts that we looked after. That company provides the power and the gas for the university. And I got to know Justine through that. And yeah, 4 months ago, or probably 5 months ago, I saw the advert for sustainability manager, and I thought, well, that's kind of the next logical step for me was to become more involved in the whole picture of sustainability, not just the power side of it. And within that other side, I was doing all sorts of, I did all the ISO reporting, which is the fun side of running things, where you have to do all sorts of reports on consumption, your carbon output, and all this kind of stuff. And we had ISO standards that set processes in place on how you're going to do that. There's an ISO standard, International Standard Organization. So it's an ISO standard for waste. There's an ISO standard for power. There's an ISO standard for everything, just about, I think. So I was used to numbers, data collection, analysing the data, and then saw the job advertised here. I went for it, quite pleasantly surprised I actually got an interview, and even more so pleasantly surprised I actually got the job, which kind of brings me into understanding more about it. E.G. Thomas's biodiversity does, the waste side of it. I mean, I understood waste and the basics of waste, but now, because as a university, there's all sorts of background legislation which is really dull, unless you like numbers and reporting and all that kind of stuff. But it's got to be done. It's a legal requirement. The government needs you to report every year on what you've used, what you produced in terms of waste, what was done with the waste, what the carbon output of that was. Same with the power, what you've used in power, gas, what the carbon output of that was, what you're doing to reduce that, all these sorts of things, and all that's got to be reported on. And that was kind of one of my strengths. And here just completes the circle for me. It's just the natural next step for me to get more involved and learn and understand the full spectrum rather than just a little bit. And yeah, loving it so far. It's great.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
That leads us on nicely to ask about your favourite part of your roles, because we can hear how important sustainability is to you and the passion that you have. Yeah. So to pick out some of your favourite bits about your role, what would you say?
I'm obviously very biased here. I will say for wellbeing development, that was probably one of the first projects I did here. I was given the task of trying to design and implement that allotment from February to July of 23. I started in Feb 23. So that pretty much was one of my first projects, and every day I come back to it, I look at what's changed, and it's just hugely gratifying to see people use it. I've had people come up to me and say, it reminds me of other special people in my life, or people past happy memories of other people. And to me, that's just makes me so happy, because it's given that space not only to, as we've said, to socialise or to improve people's mental and physical health, but it's also given something that they can feel and kind of have that link to. And every day when people pitch stuff, or they say, or they join in with activities in there, it's absolutely lovely. And I love having the bit about biodiversity in my role, because I've always been a bit of a nature nerd. I'm not afraid to admit that, and it's just lovely to be able to share that passion with people. And ultimately help the environment. So yes, Tim.
That's my favourite part of the job,
Yeah.
really, or one
Yeah.
of the favourite parts of my job. Listen to, I mean, not just Thomas, but other people. Just going around the campus really and talking to people, and actually, most people are actually surprisingly passionate about it and want to do something. They just don't really know what they can do, and that's kind of it. It's for me. It's getting the word out, and you know, not banging a drum and say you've got to do this, you've got to stop driving your car, you've got to live in Hessian sacks and all this kind of stuff. You know, it's none of that. It's just helping people, you know, understand and tweak what they do and change things. And the other satisfaction, sadly, with me is the numbers side of it. I like to see the numbers because the numbers tell you what you're doing. We've been successful. Our action plan for waste, for example, all our action plans and statements are all online. People can find them on there, but the action plan for waste, for example, was to be 95% or less than 5% to landfill by 2030. We're already less than 5% to landfill. So the next step for us now is having achieved that goal super early, which is fantastic, is, you know, we then got to change the numbers, you know, so we've now got to look at how we can actually reduce the waste. You know, as a university, chairs break, screens pack up, laptops, all that sort of stuff. We produce a huge amount of waste. So the key is doing something else with it. We gift a lot of stuff. If it's reusable, laptops have come to the end of life, but they're still usable. Give them to schools who can't afford to buy them. We've got them, we've used them, all those sorts of things. It's just, you know, Thomas says he's a nerd. Maybe I'm just a bit cheesy. I like to see things given away, being used again, and people enjoying stuff. You know, Thomas with his wellbeing allotment, and people who've enjoyed the wellbeing allotment. You know, it's just nice to see. And as I say, the numbers behind it all prove that things are successful and that we're heading in the right direction, and that's what gives me the most pleasure.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. I mean, you must be very proud of all the work that you've done because, as you say, you know, just seeing the impact, and with all the data that you have, you can see that you've really made an impact.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
I can't claim a lot of credit because I've only been here 4 months. I can see the progress and I can see the changes that have been made, and the work that Thomas and I mean Justine Oakes, she is the sustainability lady. She still is the sustainability lady. I mean, she's really super duper passionate and knows everything and everybody. And that's her passion, and that passion feeds through to everybody who works with her. Myself and Thomas certainly included. And the new lady, I'm sure, will have the same effect when we've got a new lady starting in October to pick up on the waste and travel side of things. So you'll probably see a lot more coming out about waste and travel, about just reducing it, changing labels on bins to make them clearer, so we don't get people put spoons in composting bins because spoons don't compost very well. Little things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me. I'll be quiet.
So, you know, now that the new year is starting for students, what advice would you maybe give to new students starting here at the university? As a previous student yourself as well, of course.
Yeah,
Thomas,
I'll give that one to you,
Thomas. I think firstly, never be afraid to ask questions. There's an old saying that if you don't ask, you don't get, and generally a lot of opportunities, certainly through school and university, I've found have only come because you ask those questions, and there's never a silly question to ask, and the more questions normally you ask, as soon as they're on topic, the more it will help your understanding. But also I did advise get to know where everything is on campus. Try and find the green spaces. Don't be afraid to socialise with people, even if they're outside of your cohort, for lack of a better word. Something I know I wasn't very good at, but looking back, I kind of wish I had done a lot more of that. Although COVID kind of took that away from me. And yeah, I and also make use of things like our wonderful careers department, who will give you so much help. They will give you help with so many things like CVs, interview advice, etc. Or micro placements. They are truly invaluable, I think, for people finding work and getting the right skills for work, because work is a lot different to being a student. And although you can transfer those skills, there's a whole different way you do things, different ways you communicate with people, different ways you email or chat to people, etc. So yeah, and then also work hard, but don't work to the detriment of your health, which I found in first year I did. I basically, every day I would spend working on assignments, and I would think that any second where I hadn't worked was a second lost, where I could be doing something to progress and get better grades in first year of a degree, despite it not even counting of a degree. And I distinctly remember a assignment that I did on the module of diversity of life, which was tracking the evolution of a leaf. And I distinctly remember I had read about 100 research papers about it, built up this massive research log of information, built up this massive structure of information that ran into tens of pages long. And to cut a long story short, when I got the feedback, the lecturer said, "This is great. I can see the amount of effort you've put into this, but it just reads like a factoid. It just reads as fact after fact after fact after fact. Why don't you, say, storyboard your ideas and then try and put it into a order? Or why don't you try and think of a way to structure it a bit better so that it's more of a story rather than a fact, 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 fact." And although, so that piece of advice or feedback I got was at the very end of that first year. And although on that day when I read that feedback, I did cry because I had put all of that effort in, I think that that's probably the best piece of advice anyone's ever given me. And I don't, because it makes you reflect upon how you do things. It made me change how I wrote things. It made me change the way I structure things. And I can honestly say, I don't think I'd be here without that piece of advice, because the grade I got would probably have been lower in the degree, and then would I have necessarily got all the other opportunities from that? Maybe not, but I'm every day I'm very thankful for that advice. So yes, use your lecturers, take the advice, and I will now stop rambling.
For me, it's, I have two daughters, 20 and 22, and it's, my advice to them is always just enjoy whatever you do. Don't put needless pressure on yourself. Don't stress about things. What will be. Just do the best you can. That's it. But don't stress, because it's going to get you. My eldest daughter, for example, is a natural born worrier. through her life through studying university, she was always going to fail miserably. She walked out with, I think, 12 A grade and 1 A grade GCSE. She got 3 A levels, A grade A levels, and she got first class honours in her university. She was always going to be a stupid failure in her mind. So yeah, just enjoy it. You know, don't stress and enjoy it, because it's the best time of your life. Yeah. When you start to work, it becomes more difficult.
I can certainly, even with COVID having been thrown in the middle, I still look at my university days and wish, in a way, I could go back there, because, and that's not to say that working here is not fun. It is so much fun. But I still wish, in a way, that you have those socialising aspects that you do get granted when you're a student. And as Tim says, have fun, enjoy it, because the degree is a lot of work. It needs to be something you enjoy, that you're passionate about, something you wake up in the middle of the night and go, that's a good way of doing something, or here's an idea, or yeah, live it, breathe it, but also enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good piece of advice from both of you about just finding the balance in everything you do.
I'll say that in 3 words, exactly.
That's great. It's been really interesting conversation we've had about sustainability and your guys' journey. So come to our final question now, which is our answer one, ask one. So you're going to answer a question from previous guests to the next guest. So linking into a bit about what you said about your time at university, the question we've got is, if you look back at your time at university, how did it change you as a person?
I didn't go to university.
So for Thomason.
Yeah.
That is a very good question. Whoever came up with that, well done.
I ended A levels, but how it changed me, it made me a much more open social person. I was always, and I can still be a bit of a loner, but I was always a bit of a loner because I got moved to a secondary school away from all my primary school friends, so I had to kind of start again. But as the years progressed, as I said earlier, just learn to enjoy what you do, and yeah, you'll make friends. You'll make friends for life. I've still got friends for life, and that's the important thing amongst it all for me. No more than that.
And for me, the degree made me more resilient. It changed how I look at certain things in life. It, as I touched on a minute ago, it forced me to take a step back and go, I don't need to work every hour, every second of the day. And I think it also changed me as a person and helped me grow both through knowledge, but also grow through, those social skills and those softer skills that a lot of people don't necessarily realise you'll pick up, like how just to be a good human, how to chat. Because there is a skill to chatting to people, there's a skill to meeting people every day. I now meet people daily round here, and you but without those skills you won't hold a conversation. It will just peter out. And so yes, and I don't really know. It's not something I've really ever bothered to reflect about.
That answer's great, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that was a perfect answer. So yeah, don't worry about that. But yeah, so do you guys have a question that you would like to ask our next guest?
I suppose the obvious question is, what changes have you made in your life that are more sustainable?
Yeah,
that's a good
perfect.
question.
Yeah,
do you ride a bike? Have you got an EV? All of the above. Any of those questions. And what changes have you made in your life that makes you more sustainable, or those around you more sustainable?
Yeah,
family, whatever.
That's a
That is a
perfect
perfect
question,
question, yeah.
given what your role is.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. That was a
Pleasure.
really, really great chat.
Pleasure.
No, thank you for inviting us.
Till next time, it's goodbye from Emily.
Goodbye.
That's goodbye
Bye.
from me. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Student Experience podcast. If you would like to be a future guest, email studentexperiencesteam@uos.ac.uk or follow the links to our podcast application form through our Brightspace page. You can also reach out to us through our Instagram page, UOS_student experience.